All right. Welcome, YouTube. Let's turn this down a little bit. Thanks for joining. Today we're going to be going over step components. How fun is that? There are quite a few. They all have their own parameters and do different things. So it's going to take a little bit. But I promise it's going to be worth it because they're all super cool. I have playing the track we made yesterday. So let's open up a new project. Let's go to 3. I think this is Cuckoo's one. Because it's factory content, I'm not worried about losing it. I'm going to go ahead, press Project, Shift, and Stop. We're going to clear that project. Now we're left with the metronome. Don't care for the metronome right now, so I'm going to just turn that down. Rad. All right, let's set the tempo to 90. You hold, I don't know if everybody knows this, but if you hold the tempo button down and you can type in with the number keys what the tempo actually is. Super cool. All right, so let's program a little drum track just to get ourselves going. Let's do, there we go. All right. All right, so the first step component, pulse. That might be better for a chord, so let's get a chord track going. We'll chord play to arm it. There we go. All right, to get a subcomponent on a step, you press Shift and press which step you want to apply to. So I've pressed both of the chords now. And let's go with pulse. All right, so pulse 1 is count 1. Don't hear a big difference. Let's try to count. Pulse 4. Okay, so it kind of pulses on it. It's a 4 count, it says. See if it does anything differently to the hats. Pulse, let's do 3. Okay, so it sounds like it's re-triggering it, but I think what's actually happening is it's taking the waveform and kind of maybe cutting the volume or the signal. All right, interesting enough. To clear it, I'm going to press the green ones that I've lit. Just undo it. All right, let's try again with all of my hats. Let's go to the second one. Which is pulse hold. That's interesting. So this is count 1. Count 2. The screen says hold step 1 through 9, ticks every cycle. Let's see if I can get some more of the screen on there. There you go. So here it's holding for a 5 count. So this might sound like it makes more sense chords. Okay, so is holding the signal for whatever number count we've set it at. So let's clear that. Multiply, this is something I use a lot in my hats, like on the last one. So multiply, I'll usually do 3. Kind of gives you that nice triplet. Let's just clear all of these so we can hear what we're talking about better. Somehow it's reprogrammed. Somehow it's reprogrammed the, oh, put random on those somehow. All right, well, let's turn that off. I don't remember putting those on, but maybe they were left over from something else. What is going on? There we go. So this one's pretty simple. It works a lot like if you have the any of the pocket operators. I have the PO20, the arcade, and it's a step multiplier. So press that, and then I'm gonna do 5. It gives you 5 multiplies in the same step length. So this is kind of fun. I think you could. That's randomized. We'll get to that later. All right. Velocity, that's an interesting one. So let's clear these. Add velocity. Now this velocity is going to give us -4, -3, -2, -1, and then the default is 5. So right here, there's no change. It's kind of interesting. So I guess what can happen is you can increase the velocity, which you can do as well with the little shift button, the thumb pressure thing that works as a tape stop or a pitch bend. If you program, I'll stop this for a second. So here, if you press down, it's giving you pitch bend. If you hold, I'm not entirely sure how to do it. I know there's a way. We won't get into that right now because it'll take too long to look up. Well, there's definitely a way to do it. But you could apparently do it with the velocity. So if we take this, hit velocity, take away the step, the multiplier, and then do velocity 1, this, velocity 4, velocity 5, that's fine, default, this, velocity 6, great. No, you have to press velocity again, which is a little annoying, but we'll deal with it. And then velocity 8. Let's hear how that sounds. So that's cool. Now ramp up's pretty neat. That's best, I think, for melodic things like chords, or I heard it used. Yeah, let's just try that. Put it there. We'll set the pattern length. There we go. There we go. Holding track and shift gives you your pattern lengths. We'll add the ramp up. So that means that every time it hits, it's going to go up an octave because we have the ramp up set to 4, which gives us 4 steps in 1 octave. Now changing the numbers changes how many steps and how many octaves according to the handy dandy sheet. I've also made one that if you go on the OPZ Facebook group is pinned at the top in announcements that you can download. I kind of took everything that was from the manual, all the relevant little information for the parameter changes in each page, and laid them out in one A4 size sheet. I think it's super helpful, at least for me. I hope it's helpful for you, and you can just download it off of my Dropbox. So let's try doing the same thing. I want to ramp up. An 8 will give us, let's see, 4 steps in 3 octaves. It's kind of interesting. We could do 6 steps in 3 octaves by doing 0. Oh, crap. So it could be kind of interesting, especially if we got a nice little stuttered swing type thing going on. All right, let's clear this. All right, next up we have ramp down. Let's do the same thing. Ramp down. So it's just an interesting way to vary your steps. Let's see what happens when we do it to So it works really well on melodic things. I think it would work on, if we did a kick drum, just your standard drum. Let's set the pattern length to 4. Let's track this down. Let's do I can't even hear a difference in the kick sample. So maybe if we go up. So you can kind of hear it. It applies it. I think it just works better with higher frequency things. I really like what's going on with the chords though. It's pretty neat. Random will give you randomization in different steps. So if you're in a kit, like a sample kit, applying random will actually, what it does is it changes the octave, but in samples the octaves are actually just different samples. So you could hear it's going through different kick drums right now. Let's do the same for the hi-hat, because I think it's kind of fun. Let's randomize. If we go to the chords and do the same thing. Actually, let's add a lead. Don't like that sound. That's cool. Let's add a ton of reverb to that. I was way off my timing, so I'm quantizing. All right, so let's try the randomize an octave here. 3 will get us random. It's 4 steps away from the root where we programmed it in 1 octave. But if we wanted to go, let's say 3 steps in 3 octaves, or let's do 4 steps in 4 octaves, it's 8. So hit those, 8. You could see the little 8 in the top corner. Alright, so that's random. Glide is interesting. Glide might be fun to do on an ARP. Don't love that sound. Cluster's always nice. Let's randomize the cluster though. That's pretty sweet. Actually, I love that one so much. I'm gonna just program that in by holding on a blank preset. There we go. It's programmed in. I'm gonna record this in. Just doing the root and the fifth. All right, so now we got our ARP going. Let's I wonder if I hold this, if I can raise the octave. Nope. I'm just going to record it in again. All right, so we got something programmed in. I'm going to select them all. I'm going to glide. So it's actually gliding to the steps that I programmed in, which are polyphonic. So this might work better on a lead line. I'm just kind of playing around, finding what might sound good. Let's try something like that. I want to set the loop length to 2 bars because I want that little walk down. There we go. That didn't work at all. Let's clear the track, start again. Quantize. All right, not perfect, but for the sake of what we're trying to do here, to explore the step components, let's add some glide. There you go. So as opposed to setting the glide for everything, which you can do, right, you could change the portamento right here. You can just set the glide for certain steps, which is kind of cool. So you could randomize, or I don't want to say randomize, it's very loud. You could assign portamento as opposed to kind of patching it in. But I think you could do the same thing. Let's say, if I wanted the same effect, I just wonder if I could record in the portamento. So let's play and record. What I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the portamento. Yeah. Yeah, so recursion. So you could get the same effect in different ways. So right now the glide is my least favorite step component. All right, moving on. Sweep. What does sweep do? Sweep does a lot of things, turns out. So I'm just looking at this. Sweep can filter up, filter down, synth down, pan, filter up long. That's really interesting. This I don't get super well, so let's find out what it can do. We could just keep it on something that kind of has long notes like the chord, so we can really hear what it's doing. So let's apply sweep, and 1 will get us filter up. I'm going to turn down some of these other parts. All right, so there's your filter, your filter up, which sounds pretty cool. Sorry, this is filter up, this is filter down. This is synth up. Synth down. Not entirely sure what it's doing right now. It might be bringing the synth part up or down in volume. This might be better suited for something like the master track to program in kind of sections where you have a lot of synths going at the same time. So this gives us some pan, which is kind of cool. I don't know if you could hear it if you're listening at home. It should be stereo. Filter up long. It's fun. Filter down long. Synth up long. Yeah, again, I think that one's better for master track, same as synth down long, and then this is pan long. So we're having a nice long sweep. Okay, the next one is called tonality, and it's these guys. So one is jump to start. Oh, sorry, ignore. The first one is ignore chord progressions. So if you have programs chord progression in the master track, you can assign the synths to just keep doing the same thing and ignore the chords. This is probably good for bass lines if you just want to have, or a drone going through the whole thing. Transpose only. Offset octave. It's pretty fun. We could offset the fifth. Wow, I've never really used the tonality because I wasn't really sure what it did, and I really like it. You could offset the third. Could have it chromatic up. Really like going back. Let's go to offset the fifth, and then I want to take just the second chord step and have it offset or chromatic up, which is 6. Yeah, so this is chromatic up on the second step. This is chromatic down on the second step. This is quantize 1. Quantize 2 and quantize 3. Now these are already quantized, so that doesn't make a ton of difference. But say I was playing something in live and it was maybe a little jazzy, quantizing individual steps to be in line would be really useful. You can, because when you quantize it, you're quantizing the entire track, right? When you hold the track button and dial up the yellow. All right. So let's go to jump. Let's bring up maybe the ARP again. Yeah, that might not give us the desired effect. Maybe the note, the solo. All right, so what this is going to do is going to make us jump to another place in the steps. Oh, that's interesting. I'm somehow still on the chords. Because I muted the other ones, but I never actually left the chord track. So this is interesting. We could listen here. Let's jump. Jump 1 jumps to the start. So every time it hits a trigger, it's jumping back to the first. This jumps 2, 4. Jumps 3/4. This jumps in 4, 4. That jumps to random. So let's just throw another few chords in there. Yeah, so now we're jumping all over the place. This jumps random. This aligns to global track, which I don't know what that is, but it sounds super cool. This skips a step. This reverses. That's super fun. And then the next two are just quantizing by 2 and 3. All right, let's get rid of those. Cool. So the last three that we have to cover are the Spark components, and they work a little differently than the rest. Basically, you can trigger either parameter notes, component notes, and trigger notes. So we have some parameter, adjustments like glide and maybe an LFO, and by pressing the T spark or the P spark, we can it's the parameter spark. We can tell it which steps to ignore the parameter changes. So by and how many loops or bars it hits. So if you want some real variation, every 2 bars or every 3 bars, you can hit your note that you want triggered or untriggered, and then the number will tell it when on which bar to apply that ignoring of the parameters. So let's just program some weird parameter changes here. I'm going to hold down record and just okay. Okay, so I've just programmed in a bunch of weird parameter changes recorded in. Now if I go and hit, say the first one, I want to ignore parameter changes every 2 bars. So it's gonna, the first time it's gonna go exactly normal, exactly as I programmed in, and the second time this step is going to ignore those parameter changes. So you do the same thing, ignore parameters every 2 bars. So that's interesting. I'm going to hit everything, just ignore. The C spark, component start, ignores step components every however many bars you tell it. So I have a lot of components that we programmed in here. I could tell it every maybe 3, or let's do every 4 bars, just to ignore everything that I've told it to do through tripping over my words, over the step components. So there you go. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's applying it sounds like it's doing loops of 4 bars and then 4 bars with the step components. Still sounds cool. All right, and so the very last one, trigger sparse. So it's just going to completely ignore triggers every however many bars you tell it. So let's say I just don't want it to hit these second triggers. I only want it to play that first chord. That's interesting. If I press it twice, it gives us 18. So it looks like there's more than the sheet says, because the sheet only goes up to 8. But I think it 6 and 22. That's super cool. So you could really vary it up over a long period of time. I'm going to quantize this. So that's not supposed to be triggering at all. Oh, because we're on 18. 2. There you go. So now it should play, and the second loop won't play. Super cool. So those are the step components. They're a great way to randomize and modify and modulate the chords and any patterns that you have programmed in. They're super fun. They're not incredibly intuitive, and even though I've had this for almost 2 weeks now, I'm still referring back to this guide because there's a lot to remember, and there's a lot you can do and a lot of variation, and not all of them are perfectly explained, but that's why I went through this, because I wanted to kind of figure out exactly what each one does and how it affects your patterns and the notes you're playing. And there's different effects if you're playing samples, if you're playing chords, because I think with the synth engines, you have a lot more flexibility and variables that can be changed. And with the drum tracks, they're just samples, which is still cool that you can do things like change the the ramp up and ramp down, and it's affecting kind of in key the tonality and the frequencies. So there's a lot you can do. There's a lot you can accomplish through the combination of step components and changing track lengths. I hope you've enjoyed. Please subscribe, as I'm always supposed to say, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.